the only effective times that I have for authoring are late at night and early in the morning. And I don't think that's untrue of most people. The reality of the situation is sleep is a great barrier for productivity when it comes to the aspects of life. However, what that also means is sleep comes at a premium. And I think this is just something I want to kind of bring up because I think a lot of us might not want to admit it. It's difficult, right? When you're faced with, should I sleep more or should I get up and do X thing, work on my website, write those 50 words, or should I, edit that manuscript that I need to get to my editor by next week? And if we choose the non-sleep option to be productive, that does have health repercussions. And I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I do want to point out that how many of us are sacrificing sleep because that is truly our only option. Hey there, it's Dan Kenner, and here we are. I'm returning to the casual author. It's been a long time since I've had a chance to talk to you, to come back to revisit this podcast and talk a little bit about where I've been. Honestly, things got a little bit crazy, but yeah, I'm excited to be back and start to get back into the swing of things. Transparently, I'm still a little bit unsure where the direction of the podcast is going to go in terms of timing and interviews and everything, but I think it's about time to come back to it. So this is going to be kind of like a resetting episode to kind of talk about where I've been, the plans moving forward, at least the half-made plans that I have, and just kind of explain what happened and what I hope to do going forward. The first thing you may have already noticed is a bit of rebranding that happened. So yes, as I was thinking about this podcast over the last 6 months, really reflecting on what it is, what I've done, I'm really proud of the conversations that I've had and the people that I've been able to meet. I think that there's so many amazing opportunities and authors to get to know. And, I just want to try to go about it a different way. So the first thing you'll notice is the cover art has changed. So that is in part due to a couple factors. Transparently, I'm colorblind. And when I was originally putting together that logo art, I was like, this looks aesthetically pleasing to myself. At which point my wife was like, it's okay, but to non-colorblind eyes, it probably could be better. So I'm really hoping to embody this ideal of casual authoring from the perspective of, life happens. There's a lot of responsibilities that we all have, regardless of whether or not you're full-time, and that will always play into how you go about writing and publishing and being an author, whether it's from a hobby perspective or even a business perspective. So wherever you sit within authoring, the casual nature of this podcast is to help any listener, but particularly those who feel a strain on their author ideals and dreams because of or as a result of having normal life responsibilities, be it children, a full-time job, multiple authoring careers, other hobbies, ADHD or something else that might interrupt your work. So just really focusing and honing in on those tasks and or tips and tricks to help you maximize the time that you have, and be able to approach it from a more positive and casual perspective. So that's where I'm coming from, right? This is going to be a very productivity focused podcast moving forward, to help us unlock the potential that we all have to make use of the time we have to be authors, to be writers, to access that creative potential that might be stunted because of the oppression of life and or the just the busyness of all of these tasks and things. So that's what the cover art was changed for, to really embody that shift to focus on the more productivity pieces of authoring. The second thing you'll probably notice is that the music has changed. So part of the reason for that is I was using a royalty-free audio prior to now, which was effective. I really do like the piece, and it was, given that it was royalty-free, I was legally using it. But, two factors here. As I started uploading to YouTube, there was copyright flags that were happening to each of the videos. Not from a legal standpoint. The copyright documentation indicates that yes, you're allowed to use this. Try to attribute to the original creator, but I was reflecting on it and thinking, this is a piece of music that is available to not just me. I would love it to be more original, something that is the casual author specific. And, this piece of audio being royalty free is most likely being used all over the place, right? And so I thought, well, let's see what type of original content I could come up with so that it is specific to the casual author. So leveraging 11 Labs, I'm sure you've heard of it, AI tool. There, they have a really cool function for generating like music, jingle, which I did, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. So that is going to be the casual author's music going forward. I hope you enjoy it. I know I do. But lastly, kind of a topic rebrand. I've already explained a little bit about it, but prior to now, I will fully admit that the casual author was a little bit unclear in terms of what it was for. I'm really grounding in what I described before now, the aspects of productivity within the author space. So I'm going to be interviewing authors still. The format will be relatively similar, but instead it's going to be focused less on kind of agnostic or random topics, focused more on these are key ideals, key productivity tips, key mindset tips that will assist someone who is feeling discouraged and or they're feeling like they're being dragged in multiple directions because they have this author dream, this writing hobby that is a part of them, but they feel like it's being squished out by the rest of life. So focusing in on that group of people. If that's not you, you're still welcome to listen. Please join me. I'll always have fun stories about my homestead, about my kids, about who knows what else is going on in my life. Heaven knows I've got stories. But, really just hoping to provide that positive productivity aspects, bringing in the mindset to allow an author who feels like their authoring is being squished out of their life to bring it back in, to let it circle back in and adopt the practices that will help them really flourish in that writing hobby and or career or goal, whatever it is for you. So that's where we are today. Everything's going to be focused on that. There are going to be more targeted conversations, and I think it's going to be a really positive shift because I think there's just a propensity for authors to feel isolated because a lot of us are experiencing very similar things. Many of us have, how many times have we gotten to a writing session and thought, oh, I can't focus because of X, Y, and Z, or I feel guilty sitting down and writing because these other fires are going on, so I don't feel like I can allow myself to take this time to do what I'm passionate about. It's, we're all experiencing very similar things, maybe not exactly in that way, but at the end of the day, if writing is a part of who you are, then there are ways to make it work. And there's so many people who have been through this and unlocked it or broken through barriers. And I want to share those stories and share my own stories. So that's where we are. I am trying some new technologies with recording and or editing. So I hope you're patient with me as I delve into the, clerical and administrative aspects of podcasting. But it'll be great. We'll figure it out as we go. The thing about me, if you recall from listening to any previous episodes, is that I'm a pantser in writing. I'm a pantser in life. So I think I've spent far too much time trying to push against that grain and come to terms with the fact that while there may be some roughness around the edges, if that's how you want to call it, to expect myself to pre-plan and or create an extremely structured experience for myself is unrealistic. So you're gonna meet me in the middle, right? We're gonna take it as it comes. I definitely will make sure that everything we talk about is relevant, organized as best as it can be in a way that you can leverage the content to the best of your abilities. But also, I hope that you are patient as I discover the best way to go about doing that matches my personality. So what that looks like essentially is I don't script this podcast. Some people do. I've tried, and that fell down like in an airplane on fire. It really comes down to just my brain doesn't behave that way. It's cohesive in certain things, but to try to expect myself to hold to a script is it just never works that way for my brain. But additionally, from a dopamine perspective, I find no joy in scripting and or even just the preparation of said script. For me, the authenticity will always flourish with myself and with the people I'm interviewing when it is not scripted. So, everyone has different opinions about what that looks like. That's how it works for me. All of my interviews prior to now, the previous 100, 150 episodes were not scripted, and that will remain true going forward. So I will always ensure that everyone feels comfortable and they're willing and open to sharing their experiences whatever that is. But yeah, there may be some rough things. Come along with me on that journey. But that being said, I want to step back into this kind of episode. I'm not going to call it a new season. Really, though, I just want to do a catch up over the past 6 months. I won't go into exorbitant details because I could be speaking for the next hour and a half if I really dove into all of the crazy things that have happened over the last 6 months. I can't even describe everything that's happened. Many of them are good. Some of them are less good, but ultimately it resulted in the podcast being pushed out of the priority list. And there were certain things that have happened recently which reminded me, wait a minute, I love this podcasting thing. I love these conversations that I'm having. There's something that brings so much joy to me in having this one-on-one, very deeply grounded interaction with someone else who has a story to share. And so I need to bring it back. So that's where we are today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with, what I know we're all waiting for, and that's the homestead and family aspects of this. So the first caveat I will add to this, maybe not caveat, but something that I've recognized is a very realistic part of my life is my full-time job, as well as my kids, my 7 kids, as well as the homestead. And I tended to skew more towards the homestead side of things. But let's be honest, there's more to life than for everybody than just one thing. So I want to properly kind of embody the true nature of my life because it's more than just those things. I will also point out that I am a little bit of a gamer myself. While I shouldn't spend too much time on that, the reality of the situation is I do. So call it lack of productivity or what, it is still a part of my life. So I may bring that up every once in a while, the nerd that I am. But in terms of a life update, I will say that the past 6 months on the family and homestead side of things have gone through a lot of ups and downs. The first really shift in ups and downs was the death of our previous milk cow. Those of you that follow my email list will know that during an unfortunate play of events, we put her calf in with her. Of course, at this point, he weighs 1,200 pounds. He jumps on top of her because he's very playful. That's just what they do. And he ends up breaking her leg. Now, the unfortunate thing about breaking a cow's leg is you can't do anything most of the time. They can't live. They can't thrive if that happens to them. So it was pretty much a death sentence. I hate to say it that way, but it was crazy. We went through lots of, deliberations about what to do. How should we go about fixing this? And there wasn't anything. So ultimately we had to put her down and we were left kind of reeling because this piece of our lives that was consuming hours upon hours per week was just suddenly gone. A lot of what my wife does, making cheese, butter, ice cream, sour cream, all of these things revolved around having this milk cow. From a financial standpoint, we were looking at losses. From, a caring standpoint, we loved this cow, and it was hard to watch her go away suddenly, unexpectedly. So while she was a little bit older, we were hoping she would last a few more years, and that just didn't happen. We had her for less than a year. So that was kind of the first step towards the homestead chaos that went on. In addition to that, we got some meat chickens. We got more meat chickens than we expected because we were trying to account for a 7 kids, 9-person family, and we want to make sure we have enough meat and eggs going forward. During an unfortunate play of events, half of those chickens were actually killed by a wild animal. So broken through the secure houses that we put together, they were, unfortunately, it was very close to us processing them. So we lost half of our food supply for the year just like that in a night. So that was insane and provided some additional challenges. I will point out that during these instances, productivity from an author standpoint took a realistic dip, because how am I supposed to focus on writing and creating when this devastation is going on? And, we'll talk more about that going forward. But, that resulted in some unfortunate delays in some of what I was doing as an author. So a reality, but very unfortunate. Then, in a turn of events, I won't go through exact timelines, but we found another cow. We did not expect it. It was just, there were not a lot of cows available in milk. We were looking for a cow that was in milk or about to be in milk, or, just a cow that was close. It looked like a good candidate for having great milk. She just came out of nowhere. She was very close, about 10 miles away. And she's awesome. Her name's Lucy. She's got these big old horns, which terrify us on a daily. But she's a brown Swiss, which probably means nothing to you, but ultimately she's a mix of a brown Swiss and a Jersey. Jerseys are known for their good milk. It just means she's bigger. She's like 50% larger than Ginger was. So this big old cow with horns, we're trying to get used to her. And then in a crazy show of events, before I get into that piece, I'll say the ultimate intent was that she would have a calf eventually. She was bred and was meant to have a baby in January of 2026. The previous owner had put her with a bull and said she should be pregnant, she should be bred now, she's probably due about January. Great. We took her in. We were pasturing her. At this point, we're buying raw milk from a local supply or a local farm. It's good milk, but, you want your own, right? And one day I went out and I was looking at her and I was like, she looks so different. What's going on? What's happening? At which point my son came up and said, Dad, there's a calf running around our property. And I was like, what? We had her for about a month and a half. And it was the middle of summer. They're out at pasture. They've got a thin electrical wire keeping them in. This calf is just bounding all over the place. And I think, none of our neighbors have cows. Where did this calf come from? And Lucy, she mooed and the cow came up to her. And I thought, oh my gosh, Lucy just had a baby. And sure enough, she did. She had a calf about 6 months earlier than we were expecting. So I had to chase down this cow. When I mean chase it down, she bolted. This cute little calf weighs probably 80 pounds, bolts down our neighbor's our trench for the irrigation. She's going down to our neighbor's house, the neighbor's house, and further down. So I'm ducking under barbed wire fences, jumping over, sliding through them. She's pushing through barbed wire fences. She goes behind our property and is running down this street that is behind our property. I finally catch up to her about a half a mile away, and I have to jump on top of her. And I had to haul her back to our property. So throwing this 80-pound calf over my shoulders. I mean, I'm a fit person, but that was definitely a workout I was not planning on getting that day. And that threw our lives into a second round of chaos, right? Because when we were not prepared to take on another milking situation, you have to prepare materials, you have to milk her twice a day. Like, this is a non sequitur for leaving your homestead alone and kind of getting tenders and going on vacations. That became an issue that we no longer could leave our house. We had a vacation planned across Idaho. We were going to be gone for a week. I had work taken off, and that just fell apart because we now have a cow in milk. I won't go through all the issues that came out from that, but ultimately, once again, author productivity took a tank because suddenly I'm getting up early to milk. We're staying out late to milk. We've got all the dishes, all the handling. We were getting 8 gallons a day immediately from this big old cow, which is something we've never dealt with before. Ginger never gave us that much. It was more like 4 or 5. So now we're met with this. How do we deal with 8 gallons of milk a day? We can't drink that much, and we don't want to waste it. We gave it to some people. We sold it where we could. We traded as often as possible, but we still just had so much milk. So that that essentially resulted in us getting pigs. So the decision was made to get pigs because pigs love milk. They can grow very well on milk. We were giving some to chickens, but so now we have 3 pigs, and they're hilarious. They're trouble. They're naughty. They dig into everything. They stink, of course, because, they're pigs. But yeah, their names are Henrietta, Porksha and Baconita. So yes, I came up with one of those names. The kids and my wife came up with the others. They ultimately will be food, but for now we're just enjoying them. They're taking care of this extra milk. So now we have more animals to take care of, right? So the homestead has grown. Like, it's just kind of exploded. On top of that, our garden flourished this year. Never a complaint. What that does result in, though, is now we have more food to preserve, right? When you have 5 baskets of fresh cucumbers, a good problem to have, you got to figure out how to take care of those so they don't go bad. So making pickles, canning things, drying things out where possible, freeze drying. We're spending a lot of time taking care of those. So that's neither here nor there. That's just what happened on the homestead since the last podcast. Pretty wild. Things are constantly developing. But on the family front, our children are just growing, right? We're watching our oldest sons approach teenager age, and my brain is exploding. I don't know that I'm prepared to have a teenager. I don't feel old enough to have a teenager, but here he is, having just turned 11, and he's already going through changes that are common for teenagers. And I'm just thinking, it feels like yesterday I was just going through these changes, and here we are met with him, just trying to navigate all of that. In addition to that, our youngest he's at this point a year and a half, or almost a year and a half, and he is trouble. He's into everything. I love him. He's so hilarious, but my goodness, he's into everything. We've never had a baby like that before. Our previous 6 were really chill. They've all had their moments, but we've never had one that it would be prone to, climb up on the counter or climb up on the fridge and do something like that. And we have one now. So the other kids love him, though. This is the first time all of the previous 6 kids have just doted on their younger sibling. He eats it up. He absolutely loves it. There are moments where he kind of gets frustrated that he's being held back, but we're homeschooling all of them, so they're home all day, every day. That's not a problem. For more often than not, they kind of leave me to my own devices when I work and do author stuff. But at the same time, right, there's this aspect of we're together all the time, and so finding quiet spaces for everyone can be challenging. And that includes authoring. Sometimes I want to slip away to write 2,000 words or whatever it is, write even 10 words. And, my son's like, hey, Dad, I want to talk to you about something. I'm not going to say no, right? Like, this is an opportunity to connect with my kid. I have to do that. So here's what that looks like, right? And this will bleed into my author update here. What this looks like is the only effective times that I have for authoring are late at night and early in the morning. And I don't think that's untrue of most people. Most of us with these other things going on in life, that's us. Late night, early morning. Occasionally we might be able to just take a day off for work to do something, or maybe on a Saturday we can slip it in the afternoon. But the reality of the situation is sleep is a great barrier for productivity when it comes to the aspects of life. However, what that also means is sleep comes at a premium. And I think this is just something I want to kind of bring up, because I think a lot of us might not want to admit it. It's difficult, right? When you're faced with, should I sleep more or should I get up and do X thing, work on my website, write those 50 words, or should I, edit that manuscript that I need to get to my editor by next week? And we choose the non-sleep option to be productive. That does have health repercussions, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I do want to point out that how many of us are sacrificing sleep because that is truly our only option, or we feel is truly our only option. You're not alone. That is just kind of a reality, because like I said, when your kids are sleeping, it's pretty clear they most likely won't be bothering you. So there's that. I'll leave that there. All in all, though, very happy. Kids are awesome. They're sweet. They're doing very well. I know my wife and I try to partner to take care of them and make sure all of their needs are met. But I will say that nearly 100% of the days are getting up at 5 and going hard until 10:30 or 11 at night. And that's, how long can that last? It's hard to say. But, we take it in stride. That's going to kind of bleed into the topic of this podcast that I want to address here in just a second. Before we get into all that fun stuff, I do want to bring up the authoring, right? This is an author podcast, but it's also a grounded podcast, recognizing that we as writers have more to consider than just the writing, publishing, creative aspects of this side of life. So I will talk about what I've managed to accomplish despite the chaos and craziness of everything I described. There's a lot of things that I love about authoring. There's a lot of things I don't like, and I think that's true of anyone. But where I've had to reflect a lot over the past 6 months is where I like to be, the spaces I like to be in, and the spaces where I don't. And it's still true that social media is a point of challenge for me. It's something that feels inauthentic. It's a place where I don't feel like I can express myself truly. A podcast feels so much more authentic, and it doesn't have anything to do with how I'm presenting myself. Social media has just gained its rap for quick information delivery, entertainment, kind of dopamine fix type interactions. And I'm looking for something more meaningful, right? Podcasting feels more real, it feels more authentic, and it's easier for me. It just feels more natural. So I've always been driven towards this podcasting. I've also been driven towards the I guess I'll say the advantage I have with the creation. The part of drafting is so fun to me. I have no issues as a pantser. I can go in without any ideas for a story. In fact, I do that every month. And in a week's time, I have this fully fleshed out, crazy story that came out of nowhere. With editing required, of course, right? My first drafts always need editing. But the reason I'm bringing that up is I've come to the realization that I have so many stories I want to share, and I can deliver those more quickly if I can shorten that publishing cycle and make it a little bit more cozy, and I guess you could say relationship based, right? Like being able to connect with people directly. So I did set up a Ream community. Now, this isn't unusual if you're not familiar with, or I guess this isn't new. I was doing this prior to restarting the podcast, but I'm leaning into it more. What Ream is it's like a Patreon, but for authors, which allows you to deliver content and or entertainment products to people on a monthly or a subscription basis. So I'm actually writing and publishing short stories every month to this Ream, and I'm having a blast with it, right? Like these are 10 to 15K word stories that are sometimes independent of anything else, and sometimes they're connected to the books I've already written. But I'm also providing an audiobook for those every month. They are generated audiobooks. Will it be the case forever? It's hard to say. But today I'm leveraging 11 Labs to bring these into an audio format and putting them on the monthly Ream. Additionally, I'm releasing early chapters of the books that I'm writing because I'm always drafting something. So every 2 weeks is a chapter release of something that I'm working on. Currently, it's the Hidden Heritage series. And yeah, I'm just having a blast with it. It's one of those things where could I be more tight-knit in terms of planning and execution? Absolutely. Am I there yet? No. So yeah, it's just a small investment, but I appreciate all the support that I've received. I appreciate all those who have goodness, that have gone into the stories and really just enjoy them and shared their feedback with me, and those that are really enjoying the content of the Hidden Heritage series. So I have published a book since this podcast paused. So that is Demon Blooded. That's the second book in the Hidden Heritage. I'm poised to publish the third one, Dwarf Blooded, here in the next few weeks after a few more rounds of edits get taken care of. But, a couple of other perks other than the content is by, helping me towards my author goal, towards my dream of being a full-time author. You also have some additional perks. You get a provided for a physical copy of the book with some other goodies, bookmarks, stickers, that is just sent to you as a part of the subscription every time I publish a book. So yeah, no purchase required. It just comes with the subscription. It's a few dollars a month, so it's nothing huge to you, I would hope, but to me, it's so instrumental in helping me deliver and just enjoy this creation process. Even if those stories may have a few rough around the edges, keep in mind that there's no professional editing paid for these stories. Ultimately, what I'll do is package these up into a collection, almost a Dan Kenner collection, And at this point, I have 12 to 15 stories that I could do that with. So it's a great opportunity to create novels of collections of these short stories. At that point, those will be professional edited, and they'll probably look cleaner. But you have the opportunity to just kind of get early access to the musings of a pantser, which I think personally is exciting. Also, I will always be grateful for any support you have to offer. There's that. Social media, taking a back burner as per usual. I have no updates as of yet, but maybe someday I'll be able to figure out how to crack TikTok. But I'll use that as a segue to kind of slip into the true subject of this. I know that was a really long-winded intro, but there's just so much that goes into my life that I want it to be a good setup for the podcast. Every update there going forward will be more abbreviated because obviously week to week fewer things happen, but there's a lot that plays into being a busy and or an author with just lots of things going on in their life, which I think is true of 100% of authors. The breakdown of what that looks like is different per author, but 100% of us have priority struggles with the author creative aspects, marketing aspects of authoring, and then the rest of life. So change is just a reality. We can go forward and we have an option of embracing that change and allowing it to mold us and shifting generally and slightly to account for that change, or we can fight against it, feel frustrated, and unfortunately allow it to inhibit our ability to flourish as an author. And if there's anything that you extrapolated from that entire update I just gave you, is that change was around every corner, and it's still constantly around every corner. There's more that I will go into from a family aspect. I gave you really the Spark Notes version of it, but there's a lot of things going into play with each of my kids that consumes brain power. And with each of the animals, my full-time job, which consumes brain power. There's a lot of things there. I won't go into, I'll kind of spare you the details that will make you roll your eyes and say, I don't know what that means. But change is something we can't always plan for. We can try to make plans for, if something changes, then I have this option. But the thing about change is there's so many varieties of change that the curveballs are constant. And I've had a conversation with a lot of people who hate change, and people who love change, and people who are, somewhat, they don't care. They're like, I can deal with change. Maybe it's not my favorite, but I can deal with it. But the most common thing I've realized in talking with these people is what matters most is less the change itself, but how you react to that change. And people's ability to do that depends on where they stand, right? Where do you stand? When something changes in your life, what is your physical response? What is your emotional response? What is your mental and or any other response that happens? What is the gut reaction that you have to that change? Think about any example. What has changed in the past week, and how did you react to it? What did that do to your ability to function, to plan, to write? If you focus it specifically on authoring, what did it do? And I think when you do that analysis, you realize, okay, I can let the change control me, or I have the option to let it maybe mold me, but not let it stop me from doing what I want to do. So I'll use some of the examples I brought up earlier. When Ginger died, and we got a new cow. At that time, I was still part of a regular writing group. I loved that writing group, and part of me still misses those conversations. But when I was going to milk out at night with my wife, there was no time. We were meeting at like 8 p.m. on one of the nights. But milking has to happen every night. What that change did was, at the time, it felt like it prevented me from being a part of that writing group. And so I had to say, like, look, guys, I'm going to have to stop. I don't know if/when I'll be able to come back to this, but it's just the reality of the situation. The morning schedule got squished because no longer did I have time to get up and do certain things, which had been true when Ginger was put down until we got a new cow and she had a baby. I had started to feel comfortable with this extra time to write. Well, the change happened, and I remember feeling a little frustrated because my expectations weren't met. And so every time I was like, I'll plan writing time here, it was just thwarted by additional change and or other considerations like job or kids. And so I had to sit back for a minute and think about, okay, what does it matter? What matters to me most, right? Is it writing a certain number of words per day, which was true at the time? I had told myself I need to write 2,000 words per day because that is what's going to make me successful. There's a problem with that. When this change hit, that goal felt impossible. I won't say it was impossible. I'll say it felt impossible. And so because I still maintained that as what I wanted to do, but my schedule was flipping all over the place, I didn't embrace that change and let it, take me back to, hang on, how can I take this change and warp with it and maintain that satisfaction that I feel with creating and writing and getting my stories out there? Once I had come to terms with that and realized I can't stop this change, but what I can change is how I react to it, that's when I took a step back and looked at the 2,000 number and thought, that's an arbitrary number. What does that actually mean to anyone? And when I realized that, I was like, okay, what I actually care about is the story, telling the story. Because I'm a pantser, once I start a story, I have no idea how that story will end until I write it. So once I recognized that that was the truth, that was where I needed to be, I was able to realize that a 10 to 15 minute writing session was okay. Did it get me to the 2,000 words? Absolutely not. Did it get me progressing towards the conclusion of that story? Absolutely. And so that frustration nearly disappeared. There were still moments. I'll be honest. I'm human. But, getting up in the morning, being extra tired because maybe I had a bad night with the kids, I didn't think, I'm wasting my time. I'm failing because I'm not hitting that 2,000 word count. It came back to, that's okay. I made measurable progress. I found out a new exciting point of the story in writing this. I had 20 minutes. I got 500 words. When I approached it from that perspective, sometimes that 20 minutes bore 500 words and sometimes it bore 1,000, right? I never really planned on what it would come out of it, but I recognized that as long as I'm living with the story, even outside of my writing session and thinking about it constantly, when I find that moment, that 15 to 20 minute interval, or when I slip away and have some quiet time, I can just continue on the story. And that change, I embraced it a little bit better. And then, kind of in connection with this, we are the makers of our reactions. We can mold how we behave and the way we emotionally respond to life. And, when that change comes, we have that option to say, I'm going to let this change rule me, or I'm going to rule this change. And despite circumstances I can't control, I can control what I know I can to keep moving forward. So the other thing I had to accept with a lot of this change was increased timelines, right? At the beginning of this year, I was so gung-ho about 2 books a year. I'm going to publish a book every 6 months. I'm actually proud of myself. I came up with a schedule. Like, I have to finish editing by this date. I have to finish the first draft, second draft by this date. I have to have it to my editor by this date. All of these things. It's in the calendar. And then change happened. And now it's like, okay, I have a relatively limited amount of time per day, per week to go into this authoring thing. And it's not just the writing. It's not just the editing. There's the social media aspects, if that's what you choose. There's the email list. There's the formatting, cover design, audiobook, all these things you have to figure out. And, the community and socializing it. And I realized that strict timelines due to this change weren't realistic. So I just had to expand that out, stretch it out, and allow it to take the time it needed to take and be okay with it. Will that ultimately result in being a full-time author? It's hard to say, right? I don't know. It's hard to say. But at least I can be confident that I get to enjoy the stories I'm writing. I get to share those stories with the people who are wanting to meet me there. And I can do it in somewhat of an unconventional way and still get to the end of my day smiling, knowing that I'm not letting my writer side be circumvented or trumped by this change, because the change will continue happening. So that being said, I hope that you feel how meaningful this concept is. Change will happen. It will continue happening to you. This podcast will be as organized as possible. I'm hoping to make it regularized, once per week eventually. The reality may be we have to ease into it twice per month or possibly once a month. Bear with me while I right size the reality of how I'll manage everything. But I just want to let you know that these conversations are not only meaningful to me, but I know they can be to you as well. So I appreciate you listening. If you're still here, you deserve a badge because that was quite the story. Going forward, I'll start bringing in people to interview. We'll start focusing on the productivity aspects of giving the all that you have to authoring. I'm going to repeat that. I'm not saying giving your all to authoring, but giving the all that you have to authoring. And that's allowing yourself to take into consideration the rest of your life. So yeah, until the next episode, which to date is still a little bit unsure when that is, I hope you join me. Keep an eye out on YouTube and or Spotify and wherever you're listening. And yeah, I hope that you're able to join me. If you have any questions, comments, you'd love to join me on the podcast, head to thecasualauthor.com. There's a form there. You can contact me through my website. You can email me at dan@thecasualauthor.com. Let me know where you're listening. Let me know what you want to hear more of. Share with me your circumstances because I love to hear where other people are with respect to their writing journey. And thank you for listening. I'm really looking forward to starting this again with you. Have a great day.